You know, I have to smile because people always say you're the greatest con man or the greatest confidant.
In the world of masterful cons, hardly any names come to mind with as much interest as Frank Abagnale. Before the age of 21, Abagnale had committed crimes across numerous countries, projecting different high-profile identities, all while remaining a few steps ahead of the FBI. This is the story of how one man with nothing more than charm and wits outsmarted one of the most considerable law enforcement agencies in the world, the FBI.
I wouldn't have done half the things because I would have rationalized and said, you'll never get away with that. No one will believe you're a doctor or you're a pilot, or I would have probably never done it.
Early life of the con man. Frank William Abagnale Jr. was born on April 27th, 1948 in Bronxville, New York. His early life seemed typical enough, marked by a relatively stable family environment. However, things started to disentangle when his parents separated when he was only 12 years of age. The emotional turmoil of the divorce had significantly affected Frank Abagnale, planting the seeds for his future exploits.
Together again, so I ran away from home and found myself in New York City without a job, with no money. People would say, "How old are you?" I'd tell them I was 16. They wanted to pay me $1.25, $1.50.
By the age of 16, Frank had already shown an inclination for fraud and deception. He started at first by utilizing his dad's gas credit card. Frank prepared a plan to charge tires, batteries, and other car-related things, persuading a gas station attendant to offer him cash as a trade-off. This early step into fraud got him several $1,000s, a little fortune for a teenager during the 1960s. Yet this was just the beginning.
So, you know, the first thing I did was alter my driver's license to make myself 10 years older.
Check forgery master. Perhaps the most financially damaging of Abagnale's schemes was his expertise in check forgery. He became a master at manipulating checks, exploiting the banking system's vulnerabilities with astonishing ease.
I got into the habit of starting to write personal checks without having any money in the bank. And the more I did that, the more confidence I built up that I could do it.
Abagnale used various techniques, including printing his own almost perfect copies, altering routing numbers, and opening multiple bank accounts under different names.
So I started writing checks, and I found it very easy to go in and cash checks.
His methods were as sophisticated and clear as they were effective. He often posed as an executive, convincing banks to cash large sums of money against fraudulent checks, and ended up defrauding banks and businesses out of more than $2.5 million just by forging fraudulent checks.
Everything had a purpose. So, you know, I walked down the street, I saw an airline crew come out of a hotel, and at first I thought to myself, if I could get one of these uniforms when I walk in a bank, they'll be much more apt to cash my check as this pilot.
His charm and confidence played crucial roles in these deceptions, as bank tellers rarely questioned his authority. By the time the banks realized they had been deceived, Abagnale was long gone, probably in a different state or country. The pilot impersonation of Frank. Abagnale's most popular and courageous con was his impersonation of a Pan Am pilot. Frank was fascinated by the charm of the airline industry, and he recognized it as an open door of opportunity. To achieve that goal, he forged a pilot's license and a worker ID card. With these fake archives, he had the option to deadhead on flights, basically flying for free.
Well, I would fly up in the cockpit so that I could fly for free. And I had a uniform.
Abagnale mentioned that throughout his con, he approximately flew more than 1 million miles, visited 26 countries, and also stayed in some of the world's best lodgings and hotels, all without ever spending any money. The forge was splendid in its simplicity. He dressed in a pilot's uniform and convinced an air of authority by answering all the questions with confidence. During this impersonation, he was even able to visit the cockpit of planes, learning the complexities of aviation from real pilots.
I happened to be walking up 42nd Street and I saw this airline crew come out of a hotel, and I thought that would be the perfect front.
The utter boldness of the act and the ease with which he deceived both airline staff and passengers alike are the literal demonstration of his extraordinary expertise and skills in manipulation.
From the movie Catch Me If You Can, you know, between 16 to 21, I impersonated an airline pilot, a doctor, a lawyer. I wrote $2.5 million worth of badge.
The medical impersonation of the con man. Not content with just impersonating a pilot, Abagnale set his sights on the medical profession as well. Using a forged Harvard University University transcript, he secured a job as a supervising resident at a Georgia hospital. Here, he oversaw 12 to 13 interns on the night shift, handled administrative tasks, and even participated in some medical procedures, all without any formal medical training.
Pediatrician probably, it was really ended up being the most easiest, which should have been the most difficult. I supervised 7 interns on the midnight to 8 shift.
Have you had any medical training?
No.
Abagnale's forge as a doctor is particularly striking because it highlights his ability to adapt and learn on the run. He relied heavily on his quick thinking and charm to navigate situations that could have easily exposed him.
They'd say, "Doc, we have a severe incardio here with I didn't know if the guy broke his leg, had a heart attack."
Fortunately, his role was more administrative than hands-on, sparing patients from any serious harm. However, the fact that he could maintain this act for nearly a year is an example of his audacity and ingenuity.
I became one of the most respected residents because I was the only one that ever allowed them to do anything without any.
Legal eye of con man with his lawyer impersonation. Abagnale's next adventure took him into the legal field. With the same carefree spirit, he forged a Columbia University law degree and passed the Louisiana bar exam on his 3rd attempt. How did a man with no formal legal education pass a rigorous bar exam? Abagnale claims he studied diligently for a few weeks, but there's little doubt that his natural intelligence and knack for deception played significant roles.
I studied for it for about 3 or 4 months, took it 3 times. The 3rd time I passed it.
Once again, he got an influential position, this time as an assistant state attorney general. However, his time in this job was short and brief. One of his colleagues, who was a real Harvard graduate, became suspicious of Abagnale's background. Sensing the walls closing in and feeling trapped, Abagnale resigned before his true identity could be uncovered. The FBI's involvement. In spite of his amazing achievement, Abagnale's exercises had not gone unnoticed by the authorities. The FBI, under the authority of Specialist Joe Shea, the motivation for the person, Carl Hanratty, in the film Catch Me If You Can, was hot following right after him. Shea and his group were calculated, systematic, and constant, figuring out the signs and clues that would ultimately lead them to Abagnale. The pursuit was a cat-and-mouse game that spread over quite a while and among multiple countries, where Frank's fraudulent activities were being reported. Abagnale's capabilities to escape capture were largely because of his quick thinking and his talent for assuming new identities. However, the FBI's hard work and persistence paid off. At last, in 1969, at the age of 21, Abagnale was captured by French police in Montpellier. He was sent to the US, where he had to deal with his list of penalties. Learning and reinvention of con man. Abagnale's story might have finished with his imprisonment. However, his life took a turn in an unexpected direction. After serving time in several jails in different countries, including one of the famously brutal French jails, then a Swedish prison, and he eventually ended up in prison in the United States, he was released from jail only on one condition: that he would help the federal government by advising them and providing his masterful skills to the Agency on Fraud Prevention.
In every scam, no matter how sophisticated or how amateur, there are 2 red flags. First red flag is at some point I'm going to ask you to give me money. A perfect example of these romance scams that have doubled in the last 2 or 3 years.
The very abilities that had made him an expert con were now being utilized to fight and erase crime, and we are calling it Destiny's Play. Abagnale's change from criminal to expert is a striking and remarkable chapter in his life. He established Abagnale & Associates, a consulting firm that helps and advises organizations on fraud prevention. His excess knowledge, drawn from his encounters and experiences, have proven invaluable in understanding and moderating the dangers and risks of fraud.
You know, you can only change if you want to change. You have to be willing to want to do that. And you can't expect someone else to do it for you. You have to do it, and it's not easy.
Abagnale's story, deified in his biography in the Steven Spielberg film Catch Me If You Can, serves as a powerful sign and reminder of the thin line between geniuses and criminality. End of the con man.
All the people I met that I really never did anything to, in fact, I took them places, I spent money on them, I bought them lots of things. They were the people most upset with me.
Frank Abagnale's life is a convincing story of misdirecting a con man to a smart FBI consultant. His ability to outsmart the FBI, take on multiple high-profile identities, and carry out violations and crimes across the globe before the age of 21 is nothing short of extraordinary, isn't it? However, it is his subsequent change and contribution to fraud counteraction that add a layer of complexity to his legacy.
Even when I was doing the things that I did, I paid back $2 million of that money because I hadn't spent it.
That's all for today's video. Thank you for joining. What was your favorite imitation of Frank Abagnale? Let us know in the comments section below. But before leaving, do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel and wait for the next amazing video.